Welcome back, everyone. POW Ponder on Weather here. Happy Friday out there. I'm going to break down the weather pattern over the next 7 days so you can plan ahead and know what to expect. If you want to follow along, the time and date is right above my head. So let's start off with the overall high resolution guidance going forward over the next 48 hours. You can actually see a lot of rain down here in portions of Texas and to Louisiana. Man, some of these have been really impressive amounts down here in between Houston and Conroe. I saw 6 to 8 inch swaths of these training thunderstorms. This is just along a stalled frontal boundary down here in this region. And as we continue through today, through your Friday afternoon, you can actually see it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just going to kind of be with us all day long. It's just a corridor. So if you're on the northern side of that, you're not getting anything at all. But further up, further to the south, it's all about the rain and the cooler conditions, especially into tonight through Friday. And that just extends into the overnight on Friday night. And as we start the day on your Saturday, it finally clears out in a good part of Texas for a nice weekend. You can see much of the rest of the country is pretty much kind of high and dry, but all the rain shifts off in a good part of the southeast. And that extends in a good part of Georgia. So they are going to be picking up some heavier rains in and around the Augusta area down there where they're playing the tournament, the golf tournament. I expect them to probably have delays this afternoon and especially into tomorrow, because it looks like a kind of a complete washout down there in portions of Georgia there. Several inches of rain along that stalled pesky frontal boundary in a good part of Alabama, through pretty much all of Georgia and to South Carolina, as well as into North Carolina through really all day tomorrow. You can see the rain around just covering up pretty much the entire state of Georgia there. And that just extends into tomorrow night through your Saturday night and really kind of clears out for a good part of the country heading up into your Sunday morning. For your Sunday Easter morning, it's going to be pretty clear for a good part of the country. But take a look at some of the temperatures, because we are going to be cooling down in a big way. We had a pretty strong cold front for April standards. For much of the country, you're experiencing that cooler, cloudier, chillier air, and especially down here as we swing through portions of the southeast heading in a good part of tonight. You can actually see this back end trough that's going to be coming in, swinging across the Carolinas through Georgia. And as we get into tomorrow afternoon, man, look at all that cool air down there. Those are widespread 40s, folks, down there for the southeast. That is definitely chilly for this time of year, as the ridge will start to build back in the middle of the country. Because remember, we are fairly dry for a good part of the country. You're going to be experiencing a really nice weekend ahead for a lot of you guys. For almost pretty much the entire United States, for the most part, is going to be experiencing more spring-like, more pleasant type conditions, especially as we get deeper into the weekend. But yeah, tomorrow we've got some chillier air down there in the southeast, and so we still get some cooler conditions at night, but it's going to be pleasant during the day. So as we take a look and kind of extend the view and take a look at what's happening going into next week, here is your upper level wind pattern. You can actually see we're going to be transitioning into what we call kind of a zonal flow. So we have that stalled frontal boundary that we're going to have to deal with for the next couple of days, but all that action is actually going to be drifting in the Gulf of Mexico, and that could spell something a little bit interesting as we get into the middle of next week. But for the rest of the country, it's pretty clear. I mean, we've got what they call zonal flow going to be taking shape. You can actually see the upper level winds. There's no really massive dips in the jet stream or anything like that really going through the middle of the week. But as we go through, going into Wednesday, say your Thursday time frame, it does actually get a little bit more interesting further down here into the south, into the Gulf of Mexico, where we are going to be developing a little bit of a low pressure down there, and it's going to try to spin up maybe a hybrid, try to spin up a very rare subtropical type system. But we'll go over all the details with that. But by Thursday, we are going to be watching our sights on another fairly decent trough that's going to be coming in off the west coast that brings the much cooler conditions back for them. And the more rain going to be entering back in the picture. And if it's not really going to be until probably next weekend for a good part of at least the middle of the country, where we do have a little bit of a dip in the jet stream that's going to be coming across. We have a little bit more energy to tap into, and we could be looking at possibly some at least minor severe storms coming back on Saturday and your Sunday time frame. But we'll go over all the details on that. But let's take a look at the overall ridging across the overall 500 millibar setup. So let's take a look at the overall zone of flow, and this is what they mean. We're just going to be starting to see kind of above average temperatures really for a good part of the country, where we are going to be a little bit cooler, but we are going to be rebounding to more milder conditions for this weekend. But especially heading into next week, we start to really kind of rapidly climb in a big way for a good part of the country. You can actually see the trough extending down here further south into Florida. That's going to be your only kind of instability, where we are going to have some low pressures really start to form down here in the Gulf of Mexico. And part of the reason for that is going to be that stalled frontal boundary that's going to be draped across a good part of Florida into the southeast, as well as into the Gulf of Mexico. At the same time, we've got this ridging that's going to be breaking out over the top, and that typically helps lower the pressures underneath. So that's exactly what happens by the time we get into Wednesday time frame, and definitely tries to deepen a little bit further heading into Thursday. But it's going to be a lot of shear with this type system. So the shear is going to feed those rain bands into a good part of Louisiana, Mississippi, southern portions of Alabama, as well as the Florida Panhandle, heading into your Thursday, Friday time frame. And then we'll be watching that trough entering the West Coast with more instability for them, but also more instability finally coming back into play for probably the middle of the country, with a little bit more rain probabilities and potential of a little bit more severe storms as we head into Saturday, maybe Sunday of next weekend. So let's take a look at some of the pressures going forward. We've got a little bit of higher pressure across the region. That indicates a lot of sinking air and a lot of drier conditions for a good part of the middle of the country. But you can definitely see by the time we head into your by the middle of the week, that the more significant trough starts to head in off the West Coast, where we start to bring a little bit more cooler conditions for them. We're still warm in the middle of the country. We've got that ridge kind of building over the top. And then, yes, the lowering of pressures underneath. Whenever you get a stalled frontal boundary, this is almost acting like it's tropical season or something. We got very warm conditions out here in the Gulf of Mexico, and we start to see the pressures lower down here on the southern tail of this little cold front. It's just going to be sinking down into the Gulf of Mexico, and you can see the longer it kind of festers there, and especially when the ridging starts to go over the top, especially on your Wednesday time frame, we definitely start to see some deepening in that low pressure. Not significant, but about 1,005 millibar low pressure out into those, taking advantage of those warmer conditions. So yes, it's very rare to have a tropical type system really anywhere in April timeframe, but it's actually never even happened in history for April in the Gulf of Mexico. So if there were even a subtropical type feature form into the Gulf of Mexico, it would be very rare because it's basically never happened. So if it forms or not, it really doesn't make a difference, because it's definitely going inland. And inland, I mean, it's going to bring some heavier rain back. So you got the stalled frontal boundary that's going to be dealing with for the next day or two. You get a little bit of a respite, but this one definitely comes back in a lot of the same areas where you got pounded for today and the rest of the day on Saturday. You got more heavy rain coming back in the picture for the good part of the southeast heading into your Thursday, say Friday time frame up next week with that low pressure. And then those low pressures enter to the middle of the country and bring a little bit more instability for them and a little bit more unsettled weather by then. But so if we take a look at the overall the Cape values by then, so if we take a look at the setup by your Saturday time frame, it's pretty quiet for most of the week. There's not much instability to work with. But again, as that trough enters the West Coast and as it gets into the middle of the country, it's going to start bringing up those south winds. The dew points start to climb back into the southern plains there, and you got a little bit more instability to work with. And these Cape values are a little bit higher than actually they were yesterday. There's Friday, but not really until I think Saturday time frame, where I think during the day on Saturday, we might have enough instability in the atmosphere, the higher dew points, and enough lift in the atmosphere too to probably bring back some stronger thunderstorms in Texas, across the Oklahoma area, and probably portions of the Kansas region, by then. But that's a long ways out. It won't actually happen till probably sometime, next weekend. So let's take a look at the overall surface map. So here's the surface map going forward for the nation for the next week. So we've got that stalled frontal boundary down here, right? So that's where all the rain action is in for really the next 48 hours or so, besides some rain across the Pacific Northwest and some little bit higher, elevation snows for them. But you can definitely see, just like I showed you in the high resolution guidance, a lot of rain for a good part of the Southeast. But by the time you head into your weekend, it's pretty clear for a good part of the country. There's your all day Saturday, right? There's Sunday. All day Sunday. So if really for a good part of the country, you're pretty much clear for most of the country for your Easter weekend. There's a little disturbance that comes in. I mean, little small disturbance, a weak disturbance in the mid levels of the atmosphere that comes through parts of Texas. You could get some isolated showers. You're probably talking about maybe 30% coverage as it squeezes out whatever moisture that might be in the atmosphere, because it won't be much. There's going to be dry mid-level air into that region. But as we go into your Tuesday, especially into your Wednesday timeframe, we're going to start keeping some more eyes into the Gulf of Mexico, because we definitely see that kind of stalled frontal boundary, but especially when the ridging starts coming over the top. I think that's the game changer when it starts to lower some of these pressures a little bit more, to have it even some hints at if anything is going to come out of this system, and it does maybe have some sort of hybrid type system, or even a mini subtropical type feature. If in case it might be named, it would be named Arlene as the first storm of the season, but that is a very outside chance. Whether it forms or not really doesn't change the overall forecast. It just gives you more heavy rain for a lot of these areas, because you can see here's the setup by your Wednesday night time frame. There's the low pressure, 1,005 millibar, and it's right along the coast, right? So these sea surface temperatures are well above average. So draped across New Orleans, Mobile, places into Destin, Pensacola, all those areas just get inundated with very heavy rain, and that pushes inland again. So that's during your day on Thursday for Alabama, Georgia, right? So these areas are going to get hit hard. The next 2 days are going to get hard again after a couple day reprieve on your Thursday and Friday time frame. And then we'll start to look out west, right? So this one moves inland, so this comes across and moves offshore after it rains a lot in the Southeast and the Carolinas. And then we'll be watching out west with that more significant trough starts to enter more of the central states. That brings the snow a little bit further east as well. So now it's going to be snowing pretty good in portions of Montana, back into Wyoming, into Colorado. It was pretty impressive there in Casper, Wyoming. I actually saw them 72 inches above average. That's 6 feet above average snowfall for like 130 inches on the season. They've had plenty of snow out there, and they're going to get plenty more coming up by the time we get into your next weekend time frame. And as we do, there's that subtle disturbance that will be entering the middle of the country down here in the southern plains that probably has a little bit stronger thunderstorms associated with it as well by the time we especially head into your Saturday afternoon, Saturday night time frame in a good part of Texas. And that will swing across the middle of the country and putting a band of precipitation and then the snow out west. So here's the breakdown on the precipitation front between now and next Friday. So this is the next 7 days, folks. So yeah, there's a lot of rain heading down into the southeast. The combination of the stalled front and then the pesky low pressure center on Thursday and Friday, that spells trouble with flooding rains across the southern regions here. Very heavy rain amounts. I mean, some of these could be 6 to 8 inch totals, is definitely not out of the question. Or look, the good part of the Ohio Valley and much of the Northeast, pretty dry over the next week or so, right? Middle of the country for the next week, you're kind of fairly dry. The only game in town is that disturbance on your Monday time frame. But then out west, you have these disturbances that come in out west, but it's really not until next weekend that that trough comes in more into play, that it brings more of the middle of the country, a little bit more precipitation. So you can definitely see by the end of next weekend, we have a lot more precipitation on the map than we have through, through your Friday time frame, and more snow as well. So this is between now and Friday, right? With the trough well out west, it's all intermountain regions, but it's not really until it moves eastbound that brings the snow amounts up too, heading into more of the same areas. Montana into a good part of Wyoming just gets crushed again with heavy snow for that region. In the western slopes of Colorado will keep the ski regions open for an extended period of time for more snow for that region, as we go through next weekend. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update where I protect you before and after storm.